Bueno, gente, vamos con otro vídeo. Hoy vamos con un poquito de historia. ¿Alguien sabe el crack del 87, el lunes negro del 87? ¿Sabéis la historia o no? A ver, sois traders, está muy bien, gráficos y tal, pero coño, un poquito la historia del trading es muy interesante. A ver, a mí en general la historia me gusta. No es una cosa que me apasione, que diga, joder, es que me encanta toda la historia, me lo estudio todo. No, pero, joder, sentarme a ver un documental, historias y tal, y sobre todo del sector en el que uno está, pues mola, ¿no? Entonces, yo os he traído, es un vídeo de 7 minutos que dura muy poco, pero para que por lo menos tener cultura general de cuando os digan el lunes negro del 87, coño, y te hablen y digan, pues mira, yo sé lo que pasó. Pues bueno, que no seamos ignorantes. Si ya no queréis leer, os traigo yo el vídeo, lo miramos y reaccionamos. Así que, gente, vamos a verlo. Aquí lo tengo yo. Black Monday 1987. Aquí lo tenemos. Vamos a verlo. Vamos a poner primero la traducción, subtítulos y vamos allá. Hola y bienvenido a Trading Forex TV. En la página web de tradingforexsp.com encontrarás los distintos servicios de los canales de señales que tendrás disponibles. Solo debes entrar en el canal deseado y encontrarás en la página web toda la información que necesitas respecto a los canales. Aquí podrás encontrar los pasos, distintas ofertas y preguntas frecuentes que te puedes realizar sobre el servicio. Para apuntarte, solo debes seguir estos 3 pasos. En primer lugar, debes realizar el pago mediante Stripe. Se acepta cualquier tipo de tarjeta de crédito. En segundo lugar, debes registrarte al canal, que es donde se van a pasar los análisis y las señales. Para registrarte, debes utilizar el mismo correo electrónico que has usado en Stripe y tu alias de Telegram, sin usar la arroba ni mayúsculas. Y por último, apúntate a la comunidad, en donde podrás realizar todas las consultas que tengas respecto a los análisis u otras cuestiones. Recuerda colocar tu correo electrónico y tu alias de Telegram sin la arroba y sin mayúsculas. Así que, bienvenidos a los canales de señales de Trading Forex TV.
Prices plunged even more than they did on Black Tuesday of 1929.
They're calling it the Monday Massacre, the worst drop in Wall Street history.
On October 19, 1987, the market suffered the worst crash in its history, with the Dow Jones and S&P 500 indices falling more than 20% in a single day, putting an end to the bullish market of the 80s and leaving repercussions for months in the US and international markets. At the same time, it radically changed investors' psychology, in a fall that would become known as Black Monday. This is the story of that day. By 1987, the 80s was proving to be one of the best decades in market history, with the S&P 500 multiplying its value by over 3 times since the beginning of the decade and the Dow Jones doubling its value. Having overcome the inflation and energy crisis of the 70s, as well as changes in taxes that allowed a surge in mergers and acquisitions, generated optimism and high demand for stocks that translated into new market historical highs. However, everything began to change a week earlier, with the announcement of initiatives in Congress to end the tax benefits that had facilitated many of the mergers and acquisitions of the decade. In addition to a much larger than expected trade deficit that caused investors to anticipate actions by the Federal Reserve to strengthen the dollar by raising interest rates. This caused a market drop of more than 9% during the week on the main indices and conditioned the market for what would come with the beginning of the following week. This would be amplified by 2 common forms of investment at that time: portfolio insurance and index arbitrage. Portfolio insurance consisted of automated models that reduced exposure to stocks in a portfolio when the market fell and increased it when the market rose, allowing risk management in an automated way that took advantage of technology and computers in investments. Index arbitrage consists of taking advantage of disparities between the indices in the stock market and the futures market. If the Dow Jones was higher in the stock market than in the futures market, then arbitrageurs would short sell the Dow Jones and buy its future to obtain the difference. Both practices, amid a market that was beginning to fall due to nervousness about the policies that the Federal Reserve could implement and the tax changes that Congress could approve, would end up amplifying the fall of this day. The day began with a strong bearish pressure in the market, causing some of the stocks belonging to the main indices not to start trading until an hour after the session began. This led to a delay in quotations that created a significant disparity between the indices in the stock market and the futures market.
Disparidad, un gap, se abrió un gap. Hubo una diferencia de 1 hora. El mercado abrió 1 hora más tarde. Malo, ¿eh? Para que un mercado abra una hora más tarde.
Because while in the stock market, 11 out of the 30 Dow Jones stocks and around a third of those in the S&P 500 didn't begin trading until over an hour later, in the futures market, the indices absorbed the fall normally. This was because if these stocks didn't start trading, they retained their price from the previous Friday in the index, artificially cushioning their decline in the stock market. This prompted many arbitrageurs to start trading by short selling in the stock market and buying in the futures market. However, these operations didn't go well, and when the stocks started trading, they opened with steep declines, so the differences between the two markets couldn't be exploited, but they did contribute to further bearish pressure on the stocks. Before I tell you how all of this spiraled out of control, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to support the channel and see more of these videos. The strong bearish pressure, which was amplified by index arbitrage, would also increase due to portfolio insurance systems, which, in the face of steep declines, began to reduce their exposure in the stock market. In other words, they sold.
Dices, Paul, ¿crees que se puede repetir una crisis como en estos tiempos? Hombre, pues fija, a ver, la del crack del 29, entre medios creo que hubo alguna más, a la del 87 van 50 años, ¿no? 50 años, del 87 a 2023, 90, 2000, 40 años, 40 años. Podría pasar, ¿eh? Podría pasar, ¿eh? Podría pasar. Podría pasar perfectamente. ¿Por qué no? Se dan estos casos. Hay que ver la gráfica histórica. Sí. Podría pasar, ¿eh?
Sold even more, and they wouldn't be the last selling force of the day, because the declines triggered margin calls.
A ver, lógicamente nadie sabe cuándo va a pasar. Bueno, algunos listos sí, ¿no? Fíjate la película de la gran apuesta, ¿no? Michael Burry predijo la caída con la burbuja del 2008, ¿no? Fue una buena caída, ¿eh? Fue una buena hostia, ¿eh?
Forcing many traders to sell their positions. In fact, during the day, 10 times more margin calls were generated than on a normal market day.
Fucking shit.
Ah, claro, esto no
All
es
of
la
this
película.
created a vicious circle where the market was falling.
Esto era la película del lobo de Wall Street, el Lunes Negro, es verdad. Es verdad.
Panic among investors ensued, portfolio insurance systems were triggered, the market fell even more margin calls were made, and so on.
Llamadas de margin call, claro. Tuvieron que llamar a todos. Claro, es que antiguamente era margin call, era que te llamaba el broker, literalmente por teléfono. Ahora te mando un mail, pero literalmente te llamaba por teléfono.
Culminated in a drop of over 20% in the Dow Jones and the S&P 500 and a lesser drop of 11% in the Nasdaq. This event wasn't limited to the United States, and the stock markets in England, Hong Kong, New Zealand, and a few days later, Japan, experienced some of the most significant drops in their history.
Aftermath.
The unusual nature of this event, considering there was no local or international economic crisis, led to numerous investigations by regulatory authorities and continues to be a subject of study. And the market drops observed during this time would only be comparable to 2 days of declines during the 1929 crash that triggered the Great Depression. And though initially a significant portion of the blame was attributed to portfolio insurance systems, they were responsible for only around 19% of the volume during the day and were not commonly used in stock exchanges of other countries that experienced similar or even worse drops. Additionally, figures like Nobel laureate Robert Shiller believe that even without these systems, the market behavior would have been similar, as this risk management practices were common and would have been carried out manually. Much of the blame was placed on market
O sea, que se había llevado a cabo manualmente esto. O sea, que alguien montó la movida esta.
concerns stemming from changes in taxes that could have ended the surge in mergers and acquisitions. These concerns were amplified by alerts that the bull market
No, la Gran Depresión fue en el 29. Esto ocurrió en el 87. La Gran Depresión fue en el crack del 29. El crack del 29 fue peor.
was overextended and there were signs that stocks were overpriced based on their ratios. The price-to-earnings ratio reached levels over 20 for the S&P 500, when just 2 years earlier, it had been at 10. This impacted the market, which was expecting a possible correction, and when it indeed began, it facilitated panic-driven responses. Another factor attributed to this crash was that the bond market had become more appealing, with yields rising above 10%, exceeding the historical average of the stock market. Therefore, part of the stock sell-off might have been to transfer funds to the bond market. It's also important to note that despite automated systems playing a significant role on this day, the exchange technology wasn't prepared for the transaction volume, resulting in a system overload that heightened confusion and delayed information delivery to investors. All of this escalated panic, and it provoked
Que claro, la tecnología no es la que hay hoy. Claro, vaya follón, vaya follón. Vaya follón en esa época, ¿eh? Hoy en día está todo en tecnología automatizado y para que se caiga algo es prácticamente imposible. En esa época sí podía pasar.
The market to not regain historical highs until 1989. The events of this day led regulators to implement measures to prevent something similar from happening again, with one of the main measures being trading halts. In the event of substantial market declines, trading is halted. This is done to allow investors to make decisions in a less emotional and panic-driven manner. These interruptions are automatic and currently have 3 levels. A 7% decline triggers a 15-minute trading halt. A 13% decline also halts trading for 15 minutes, and a 20% decline leads to trading being halted.
O sea que si cae el 7%, se retrasa 15 minutos. Si cae el 13, se restaura en 15 minutos. Y si cae el 20, al día siguiente. ¡Hostia! Si estamos esperando a los extraterrestres. Pues espérate, ¿eh? Espérate que se viene, que se viene. Ya solo nos falta Godzilla, solo, en serio.
For the rest of the day. If you enjoyed this video, you might be interested in learning more about the most significant stock market crash in history.
Vídeo rapidito, ya lo sabéis, lo que ocurrió fue un poquito de... Bueno, me parece que no hay mucha explicación, ¿no? Un poquito de aquí, un poquito de allá y... Lunes negro y a tomar viento, ¿no? Y vuelta a empezar. Pues bueno, ya lo sabéis, para los que no lo sabíais, pues que ya sabéis, el lunes negro del 87, que por cierto salía en la película del lobo de Wall Street, que en teoría era... ¿Cómo se llamaba? ¿Cómo se llama el protagonista? En la vida real, Jordan Belfort. Jordan Belfort, el primer día que empezó a trabajar como ¿cómo se llama? Como agente de bolsa, oficialmente, le tocó el lunes negro. O sea, eso es mala suerte, ¿eh? Eso es mala suerte, madre mía. Bueno, gente, buen vídeo. Le voy a dar ese like que se merece. Yo sé que no es mucho de estrategias y tal, pero bueno, no está mal. Por si no lo sabíais, un poquito de culturilla general no viene mal.